Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming out here. Appreciate the host putting this together. Most of you know me, born and raised here in Franklin County. Went off to school, learned a lot about the law, the Constitution, but one thing that's always stuck with me growing up on the family farms in this area is fighting for the little guy. There's not a whole lot of that going on right now, but I'm proud of the record that we've put together over the last 2 years. That's a fight that I'm willing to continue for the next 2 years if the voters will still have me. There's all kinds of issues that are important coming up. That's from our rural economy, transportation, our schools. We're going to have a lot to do with the budget. And then we've got redistricting coming up. So for our farmers and businesses, and especially making sure that decisions are made at the local level when that makes sense, that we make sure we've got rural representation in that regard. So my record's out there. It's a record we're proud of. I'm proud of the local endorsements and state endorsements that we've been able to acquire. I look forward to answering your questions throughout the evening. Thanks.
Thank you, and thanks to all of you for being here this evening. It's so important that all of us learn about the candidates. I'm Sherry Weber, and I came tonight so that you could learn about me and so that I could learn about you. My husband is in the audience, and I never fail, I hope, to introduce him because I appreciate his help all the time, Marvin. And we also have 3 children. Our children were raised over at our family farm in Harrington. And after that point in time, when the children were grown, I ran for the legislature because I wanted to give something back for living in such a great country. And I knew that I would never serve in the military, the people who protect our freedom and the right that we have to vote. But I did know that I could run for public office. And I served actually in the Kansas House for several terms, and I feel now that I need to step up again for the same reason, because I care about the quality of life that we hand to our children and our grandchildren. And this year, I feel our liberty has really been eroded. Our legislators left town after they passed a House concurrent resolution. It was passed on March 13th. In the House, it went through the Senate on the 17th, and our governor immediately shut down K-12 ed for the rest of the school year. And now she's doing it again. So it's time to step up for our liberty. Thank you.
Okay, Mark, I'll have you go next. All right, thank you very much. Looks like we found a shade over here and a shade there. That's a good choice. My name is Mark Powles. I grew up in Garnett, Kansas. I was a school teacher for 15 years. Did about 12 years of part-time help as a PE teacher and a music teacher and their custodian at a Catholic school in Garnett. I got my master's and bachelor's degree at Pittsburgh State University. Served in the Kansas Army National Guard at right here in Ottawa, Kansas, 127th Field Artillery. That was way back. And got out and then was taken up again by the 35th Infantry Division Band out of Olathe, Kansas. And back in 2001, I did get out of the public school system because I did start a family. My wife and I have been married for 22 years. I have a daughter, Bethany, that is 20 years old, is now in college, and a 17-year-old daughter that is going to hopefully begin and finish her senior year in high school. We're crossing our fingers. The reason why I'm running is because it's necessary and it's my duty to do so. It was not my choice. Sometimes these things choose you, you don't choose it. I do have a private business that I am working on right now, but it had to be put on life support until this is all over. So I hope I do get your vote on August 4th. We've got a lot of things to do in our government. My position is that government needs to be reined in, not the people.
Chief, if you want to take care of that, muffler seems a little bit loud. My name is Blaine Finch. I'm running for state rep for the 59th District. It's been my honor and privilege to serve you for the last 8 years in the Kansas House. I was privileged enough to be born and raised here in Franklin County. My mom, Monica, is right over there with the Finch shirt, in case you're wondering. And my dad, Ralph, is here tonight as well. And I want to thank them for everything they've done for me in getting me to this point in my life. Ottawa's my hometown. I'm a business owner here. I've raised my family here. I hope to get my daughter to move back here someday. Our firm is right down there. This is our 150th year. It's one of the longest continuously operated law firms in the state of Kansas, and that's something I'm proud of, to be part of that legacy. And it's what I try to do in your public service. I try to carry on the legacy of good representation from this area, to fight for the things that are important to you, values like being pro-life, like taking care of those who are vulnerable, like our elderly, fighting for our rights when it comes to things like local control. A lot of what Senator Tyson talked about is because of the work we did in the special session this year in House Bill 2016 to make sure that we retain government closest to the people and that we govern with the lightest touch possible so that we preserve our constitutional freedoms and our public health and safety. We can have both, we should have both, and it starts by maintaining our rights and our privileges that we are given by our Creator. Thank you for the opportunity to be here with you tonight and answer your questions. I'm happy to stick around and talk with any of you after as well. May God bless all of you. Thank you.
Thank you all for the introductions. I'll ask these questions. So we have Mr. Powles, Mr. Samsel running for the same district seat, and then Sherry Weber and Blaine Finch running for the same seat. So I'm going to ask them to respond to the same question when I ask these. So Mr. Powell, I'll let you start, and then Mark, I'll let you answer the same question after Mr. Powell's. And let's go 2 minutes on this question. How would you address the reopening of schools in the state of Kansas?
I would open them on time and with as little restrictions as possible. We have a thing called hygiene, and this is a good opportunity to teach our students how to take care of their hygiene. We've had a lot of ups and downs with this whole crisis. Yes, we have a virus. We've had worse viruses. This one may be a little more contagious, but in my opinion, in my district in Garnett, Kansas, and many others, we could have finished the year. We had no cases. So my opinion on this is get started. I know my daughter who is attending Bethel College, they're starting on time, August 19th. We can make decisions for ourselves. And this chimes in with the whole local control issue. Thank you.
That's a very good question, and I don't know that there's been a great answer to it, nor do I know that there is one. My biggest problem, and I've answered this question in similar ones about the mask and everything else, but we ought to be trying to find a goal, whether that comes from our president or from our governor or somebody in leadership, but what is our plan to beat COVID-19? And whether we think it's merely just another version of the common flu or we think it's something far more serious, if we can get everybody rallying behind it, Americans are pretty dang good at coming together and beating something, but I have not yet seen a plan that's supposed to get us through. If we all remember, flatten the curve hashtags came out right off the bat, and I think we did a pretty good job of that. But then what has our plan been since then, I think is where we've struggled. And so I know we use the term herd immunity a lot. Well, my understanding of that is that essentially the thing's going to spread because we don't have a solution for it yet. We don't have a vaccine, we don't have a pill, and it's probably not going to magically go away. So my general philosophy and what we tried to put together in the special session was allowing those decisions to be made not by one person, whether that's the president or the governor or me or anybody else. Those are best made locally. That's where we are best able to adapt. That's where we're best able to find local solutions. And our problems down in 1A, Crest High School and Colony are not the same that we have in Garnett or Wellsville or here in Ottawa, or certainly up in Kansas City, Olathe, or other parts of the state. So that's why I'm proud that we passed legislation that put that in the hands of the State Board of Education and the local school boards. Now that said, it also gets to transparency and process. The bill that we passed in the special session is not perfect, and that's why I've said repeatedly on Facebook and everywhere else, the more people we bring to the table to solve these things, instead of having just a small group, we get better solutions that way. So to me, the answer is not crystal clear in the legislation we put together, but that's something that we can improve when we come back in January, and so that we can find the best solutions that those things are made best, whether it's from our school boards or from the State Board of Education. But I've also advocated for the state legislature in a way that we can do it and do it best for the state. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Weber, I'll let you start with this next question. We'll go 2 minutes on this question for Sherry and Blaine as well. So we just talked about school reopenings and masks were mentioned as well. And how would you address what some are calling a current overreach from our current government and the potential overreach of future governors?
Overreach has been the entire environment since about mid-March. And again, it's because of a House Concurrent Resolution 5025 that got passed, and it gave the governor, very short piece of legislation, gave the governor control, the legislative control, until January 25th of 2021. So having a legislature that left town halfway through the session and didn't go back has been a problematic thing, whether it's taken out businesses, whether it's put children at home, whether it's stressed families. It does not matter. Everybody has been touched in this in one way or the other. We even had a governor who had the audacity to shut down churches. So that legislation was flawed. We got sued in terms of our legislature over it. And I believe the only way to fix this is to take them and put them back in Topeka and fix it. Now, there's two ways you can do that. You can call the legislature back if you have a supermajority of legislators who want to come back, or you can have the governor call a special session. Well, the governor called a special session, and they came up with a House bill named 2016 that puts local control on everybody's radar screen, but it certainly didn't help, did it? Because the governor decided that now we're going to push schools off until the end of August, the beginning of September after Labor Day. So I don't think that piece of legislation is working. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this discussion with the state school board and with local commissioners. That's why I believe that you have to send someone like me who's willing to stand up and say no. When you have an obligation to stand up for the Constitution, even in the face of emergencies like 911 and now COVID-19, you have to stay and do your job. I appreciate that you have been listening so attentively, and I hope that you'll take my story and look at the piece that's inside of it about the legislation and study it. And I think you'll come to the same conclusion I did. Thank you.
For some of you who were in Osage the other night, you'll remember this. My opponent's reliance on House Concurrent Resolution 5025 is a little bit like somebody saying the Chiefs lost the Super Bowl because they were down at the end of the first quarter. The reality is this game isn't over. It's not finished. The legislature passed a first draft, and that's what she's been handing out, the very first draft of that resolution, not even the final draft adopted by both houses. That's misleading. She's had 2 opportunities to correct that, and she continues to do it, so at this point I assume it's willfully misleading you as voters. The reality is the resolution that we passed included more checks and balances than any legislature operating under this law in the last 45 years. The law that we had to deal with emergency management in this state was left to us by legislators like my opponent who had been there before. We added checks and balances, and when we exercised them, the governor sued us. No great surprise. She didn't want to be checked. We checked her. And we were later found by a U.S. federal court to have done the right thing, that the order she had promulgated was unconstitutional. Local control is the answer. Our legislature, by our state constitution, is not to be there all the time like Congress, sucking up money and taking up time. It's to be there 90 days as a citizen body to come and vote on things and go home. And that's what we do. Your county commissioners, your Board of Education have constitutional responsibilities to exercise local control and oversee our state school system. That's why we use those bodies, because that's the constitutional republic in which we find ourselves. Creating the legislature as some sort of super dictator to tell all the other branches what to do is unconstitutional. It's not our system in this state, and it's not how we should do business. Schools should open when the school professionals say they should open, not an elected governor, not the legislature. We have a state board of education whose sole constitutional responsibility is to oversee public education. And our superintendent and our school board in this town had it right. They had a plan to reopen. They had a plan to use virtual education that, oh, by the way, the governor's order absolutely prohibits virtual education prior to Labor Day weekend. We can do better. Local control is the answer, and we'll see what the state school board does tomorrow. Thank you.
Mr. Sams, I'll let you start on this question, and we'll go 2 minutes on this question as well. Can you explain your plan or thoughts for Medicaid expansion and how it affects state budget?
Yeah, and this is a question that's come up frequently, Medicaid expansion. And I've explained both sides of this issue. I've voted for it once and I voted against it once because it depends on what's in the plan. What we've got right now from the federal government is they are printing a bunch of money that we don't have, and my generation and those younger than us are going to be paying for it. But that money right now is still coming out, it's still being printed, and it's going to 37 states across our country. Kansas is not one of them right now, so we're not getting a small piece of that pie that's coming from Washington, D.C. So on the one hand, I absolutely get it. If you want to get rid of Medicaid and get rid of Medicaid expansion, cut it. But that needs to be done at the federal level. Because the flip side of that is we're not getting any benefit through that whole process. So what we did, and I was proud to see leadership come together from both sides of the House in the session, is they put together a plan that if you need help with your insurance, then the assistance coming from, they put a little bit of skin in the game. So you can't do work requirements, those have been held unlawful, but you do contribute and pay for part of it yourself, and then that keeps costs down. That's why our local hospitals, when I work in Garnett, Ottawa, and with our mental health clinics, they're saying absolutely yes, please pass Medicaid expansion. It's not perfect, it's not going to save us, but this is a good use of our taxpayer dollars. And so to me, I always come back to transparency in the process because healthcare is a huge issue right now. It's holding up every other healthcare issue. Our independent pharmacies, including Auburn and Garnett and Wellsville, are trying to get some legislation done, PBM legislation, but it can't be done until Medicaid expansion either goes away or gets passed or something's done at the federal level. So if it were up to me, if I'm the federal government, I've got to improve insurance, but obviously that's not the role we have here in the state level. So until then, I think it's incumbent upon everybody in the state legislature to do the best we can, come up with something that works for Kansas, takes advantage of what the federal government allows us to do, but make sure we make good use of taxpayer dollars. Thank you.
Mr. Powell, same question. You need me to repeat it?
I'll try to say this gently. Obamacare was unconstitutional. It is not a tax. It is not the federal government's responsibility or enumerated duty to deal with state issues. They deal with foreign objects and interstate commerce, treaties, negotiations, and so on. Okay, there's a confusion there. Okay, so leave the federal government out of it. All right, we've already been through that. Now at the state level, insurance is a state issue. Each state has a responsibility to take care of their own people. That's what we call state sovereignty. We're losing state sovereignty over issues like this every time we run to the federal government for answers. Okay, so as far as Medicaid is concerned, I'm going to make this real short. I'm a Calvin Coolidge fan. He was a man of very few words. We can't do it. We can't afford it.
All right. Mr. Finch, I'll let you start with this question, and let's go 1 minute each on this question. So our mailboxes are filled with promotional cards about this race. Why is there so much interest regarding the race this year?
Mail is one of the ways that we as candidates can communicate with people, and so that's if some of the mailers that you've seen from me are coming from me to tell you about me or to draw a contrast between myself and my opponent. Some of the other mail you're getting is from outside. If it's from a PAC, if it's from a C4, that's outside money. That's usually from some paid consultant, somebody that works closely with the person they're trying to advocate for in order to elect them or defeat someone else. So if you see it and it's coming from outside this district, it doesn't have my name on it, doesn't have my opponent's name on it, you can assume someone else is paying for it and trying to get you to vote the way they want you to vote. I would urge you to be doubly cautious about anything that's not coming from one of the two campaigns, because that tells you that they've got some agenda that they don't want to discuss. And the money they take in isn't publicly disclosed. So that should tell you something right there. If you want transparency, look to who's actually using money from their campaign to spread their message to you. And if you have a question about my record, I'm happy to talk to you anytime. You reach out and call me, message me on Facebook, send me an email. We'll talk about any of that trash that showed up in your mailbox from outside our district.
Mrs. Weber, same question. You may ask that again. So the question was, our mailboxes are filled with promotional cards about this race. Why is there so much interest regarding this race this year?
Interest in a race is good. We all have a privilege, a right, a responsibility to vote, and we need to do the research to figure it out. And when you've got that much mail in your mailbox, something is going on that you need to do the research about. I can tell you that my husband and I have funded most of what I have sent out, and you have not seen that in your mailbox. You've seen it in your doors. If something has come from outside, it's because someone is protecting their liberty. My opponent has $100,000 in his campaign fund that came from special interests. Those are the same special interests that he talks about fighting against when he's in Topeka for us. But the reality is about 3-4% of it came from all of you. So I think there's where you have to start to do your research and know that the interest here is because it's very serious. It's about our liberty. Thanks, Richard.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask this question to all four of our candidates up here, and I'll let Mr. Powell, I'll let you go first, and Mark, you can follow, and then Jerry, and then Wayne. 2 minutes each. What is your vision for jumpstarting the Kansas economy following COVID?
Boy, that is a tough one. What I would do is get people back to work right away. First of all, it never should have happened in the first place. That's my opinion. In the state's constitution, it says that all legislative powers shall be vested in the legislative body. Is there a statute that circumvents that in our Constitution? I don't think so. The Constitution is the first. That's what we take an oath to defend and protect. So now that we're here and dealing with this, we're going to have a shortfall. I've heard that from several candidates. My procedure would be to get people back to work right away. Yes, we can be careful, but we've got to get people back to work. The governor, in my opinion, has artificial powers right now. I've told that to people over and over and over again when they ask about this. It is artificial. It is not constitutional, and it needs to end immediately. That's it.
Well, the first thing, and there's two things that go together because you can't do one without the other. One's the economy, and especially our rural economy. The shutdown that we had previously when we tried the one-size-fits-all plan does not work, especially for rural Kansas. It killed agriculture unnecessarily, especially our ethanol plant out in Garnett. It hurts small business, our gym owners, and the restaurant operators, and everybody else. So the one-size-all doesn't work. But the other flip side of that is we've got to come up with something, and this is what I was talking about earlier, to beat COVID-19. We've got to learn either to live with it or beat it or somehow get through it. Until we have that plan, we're all going to keep getting angry at each other over the masks or the mandates, and probably rightfully so, because those are very controversial issues. And if we're not rallying behind a common goal to beat COVID-19, then we're beating each other up unnecessarily. So that all ties into those two big issues coming together. One of them that I'm very proud of is our 10-year transportation plan. It's an Eisenhower legacy plan. That's huge for District 5. That's big for US 169. It's going to be big for 68 Highway. We need an east-west connector that gets all of the growth that's coming down from Johnson County into Miami County and Franklin County. That's huge for District 5. That's huge for here in Ottawa. And then it also ties in to having somebody who's willing to fight for the little guy and stand up for the district. And that's why when we talk about these mailers that are coming in, there's a reason that they operate the same way they do year after year after year. I went and I worked with those guys. They wanted these huge income tax cuts, and I'm not opposed to income tax cuts, but do you guys want income tax cuts for just the folks at the top, or for you and me and our neighbors and our farmers? Because I told them when I knocked on doors in this district, we want property tax cuts. We want that for our veterans, our seniors, our farmers, our families. Well, guess what? When I asked them and approached them about property tax cuts, they had no interest. It was their way or the highway, and so when you stand up and fight for the little guy, they're not used to that, they don't like it, and then they flood your mailbox and my mailbox with things that are about 95% untrue. So, but economy and beating COVID-19, thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Weber, same question. Would you address that as well? I can re-answer. What is your vision for jump-starting the Kansas economy following COVID-19?
We're going to have to get people back to work, and that means that we have to stop the governor from issuing all of these mandates and spending our time trying to litigate with her or utilize our other agencies to try to decide what we should be deciding on a local level. It was havoc, that piece of legislation that allowed the governor to have power until January 25th of 2021. Simple piece of legislation carried by my opponent. They left town, they didn't go back, and equating it to the Super Bowl is like saying the Chiefs left halfway through the game and then at the end threw a Hail Mary pass. This is not working. We have to get businesses back up and running. That's the lifeblood of our economy. That's how we help our budget. When we get back to the legislature, we have to trim things because we don't have the revenue coming in because of what's gone on in the last 3 to 4 months. So this is not going to be an easy job. All of us, and I mean all of us, we're going to have to help one another. We're going to have to help our businesses on a local level. We're going to have to take back our government from the governor. If that means that you have to go to your local school boards or your local commissions, whatever we have to do, we have to do it. This is a lot like 911 was. I was majority leader then, and people were unrestful. They were frightened. They weren't traveling. They were not spending their money in the economy. And we had a budget hole. At that point in time, it was merely $150 million. At this point in time, it's going to be much greater than that. And so I've got the experience to work on that budget, having done it before, and that's why I stepped up. That's why I want to give you back your liberty, and I want to hand off a better state to our children.